So here I am ready to draw my fashion item for a component of something popular right now, pop art. And so I have my plan sheet here, and I made my list of people. I circled my favorite one, so I'm doing Vincent van Gogh, who is a post-impressionist artist, so like 1800s is his time period. He's an artist, he was a painter. He painted a lot of paintings. He uses a lot of paint, real thick paint, a lot of swirls. And so I designed all my different variety of shoes that I thought he might wear. And I included designs that I'm familiar with from his paintings. And then I put a paintbrush because he's different sketches down here. And I'm going to pick my favorite, and I am going to begin sketching. Now, we learned some sketching techniques. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some structure lines that I'm going to kind of map out how wide I want this shoe to be, so that way I don't just start drawing every little detail and end up with a shoe that's only this big. So I'm giving myself guidelines here, and I'm doing it very lightly because I know I'm going to erase it. And so I'm going to map out like where the top of my shoe is, when it's going to start coming down, and then where the top of the shoe is going to hit, and this will be roughly the bottom. So I'm giving myself structural guidelines. From there, I'm going to start sketching. So loose lines that are light, so if I make a mistake, I can erase. Okay, so now that I have like a rough sketch, I'm going to clean up some of the marks I know I'm not going to need anymore. I am going to start incorporating like all the designs, so all of the little symbols and pictures that I made here, I'm going to start designing it out. And again, I'm following my sketches, so I don't really have to do much thinking now because the thinking has already been done for me earlier when I sketched all those designs. So this is just placing it out on the paper and making sure it looks right. Once you finish your sketch, you want to determine what kind of drawing techniques you want to use to complete your piece. So choose your media. Media means materials. Now that I have the shoe sketched out and it's what I want it to be, I've opened my jar of ink. I'm going to use my dip pen here. I'm going to dip it into the ink and I am going to outline it. So you want to think of this as like if you're going to outline the piece with Sharpie, except we're using ink here. So just have nice control. We practiced this in the classroom before starting, so you should have some experience with it. I'm letting the ink pen here naturally kind of do its thing. So especially like here on my fun little swirls, some are going to be a little thinner and some are going to pick up the thickness depending on the direction of how I'm moving. So I'm looking at my design here and I need to thicken up some of the lines. So I'm going to go back and press directly down with my nib pen here to get a thicker bead of ink to come out. If you run into a problem where the ink splatters, sometimes that can be a cool effect. So I wouldn't be too worried if you run into a little mistake. Like, let that just become part of the style of your piece. So what I'm doing now is I'm incorporating a shading technique into my drawing, and this is something also we practice in class. I chose scumbling, so I'm moving in a circular motion, and I'm putting this different areas of the shoe. So depending on what media you choose, you might add this, you might not. Now, if you want to add color to your piece, make sure you use color knowledge that we've learned in class before. Use this handout to help you. You could leave it a black and white drawing, or you can add color. So I'm going to add a little bit of watercolor to this piece. So remember, complementary or like opposites, they look good together. Analogous colors or neighbors on the color wheel, they look good together. Monochromatic, whatever you want. So I would take a look at your design and like how many sections do you have? How many colors do you think you're going to need? And then decide upon a color scheme. Now I just have my sketch paper right here, so I am going to pick my color scheme, and I think I am going to do split complementary. And I'm going to use the color blue, the color violet, and then the color yellow-orange. So those are my main colors. Now, because I wrote that down on my little plan, I don't need to think about it anymore. I have it right there. Now with watercolor paint, you have to be in control of how much water you put on that brush. If it's too much water, it will become too puddly. And this right here, my friends, is too puddly. So what am I going to do? I'm going to dry off my brush and I'm going to soak up some of that water before it spreads outside of the lines. And I can let that dry. And if I want this to be brighter, I can just go back on with another layer. The more water you have on your brush, the lighter the paint will appear. The less water you have on your brush, more paint, the darker the paint will appear. So I'll just keep working on this and show you when I'm done. Make sure you rinse between colors so you keep your colors nice and pretty. And here it is all complete. Okay, here's another style of a fashion item. So I decided to draw a hat, and I used Starbucks as my inspiration here to connect with pop art. I used marker and colored pencil, and the techniques I used were I did value, so I did a little bit of shading, dark to light. I layered colors on top of one another for the mermaid tail, and in the background I did scumbling, moving in a circle. So there you go, there's some options.